everybody. I am Ashleigh Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious, and I am so thrilled that you're here. Thank you. I have been a crime and justice journalist, as well as a war correspondent and general beat reporter for, I think, more than 37 years now. And I've never had this kind of a very, casual format before. But I wanted to start this podcast. If you're new to my work, thank you for being here. I wanted to do this because I think that when we're allowed to speak in a different voice, we speak in a different way. We have different perspectives. And this is a format that I've just been like starving for. Being off TV and being in this world, it's just a super huge joy. And so thank you for being here. A little bit about me, if you don't know all my background. I currently host a crime and justice show called Banfield on the network News Nation. I have worked for Court TV, many shows for Court TV. I have worked for NBC, Dateline, as well as the Today Show and Nightly News and all the MSNBC programs. I had a primetime show on MSNBC in which I was mostly a war correspondent, spent a lot of time in Afghanistan, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Iran, Iraq, you name the war zone, I was there. Gaza, West Bank, lots of time there. I also worked for Investigation Discovery. I worked for A&E doing a show called Live Rescue. I often do a show called On Patrol Live, following the police. I worked for ABC News in 2020 and World News Tonight and Good Morning America. I mean, the list goes on. And CNN, I had a show called The Legal View on CNN for a long time. So and HLN, I also had a crime show on HLN called Primetime Justice. And so I've done a lot in this category, in this sphere. And I've sort of been living, eating, and breathing true crime for a very long time. And have been on the road and have been in the studio and have been part of, the interview sphere. So, and the analyst sphere. So it's sort of great to have all that stuff in the quiver of arrows that I use to do this work. This podcast in particular started with a limited series that I produced over the course of a year called Uncle Peter. I would love it if you would check it out. Uncle Peter is the story of a guy I grew up with called Uncle Peter to me. He was my best friend's uncle, and he's also one of the most prolific serial sex offenders ever to walk the planet. The log line, if you will, on him is that he is, his behavior is worse than Diddy and Epstein and Weinstein and Cosby combined. And we didn't know it for 50 years. We just thought he was kind of like Hugh Hefner. Skeevy, right? But we didn't know he was serially raping people and destroying people. Back in the 70s and 80s, not many women would speak up because, of course, it's your fault. You were wearing a skirt at the bus stop, right? That's what the mentality was back then. In the 90s and the 2000s, it still wasn't great, a la Weinstein and Cosby, etc. But now he is in prison. And the victims who have come forward to say that they've, been abused by him are in the thousands. So anyway, as I called him Uncle Peter and saw him growing up, it's really interesting to have that insight and a connection to a criminal like this. Anyway, check it out, Uncle Peter. Hope you will. I've also covered, you name the criminal case, and I'm there. I was there for it. Let me just go over a quick list for you. And this is the quick list. O.J. Simpson, Casey Anthony, Jodi Arias, Natalie Holloway, Scott Peterson, Elizabeth Smart, Gabby Petito, Brian Kohberger, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, Alex Murdoch, Drew Peterson, Susan Powell, Brock Turner, Chris Watts, Sarah Boone, the Gilgo Beach case. So I've been around the block. That's, again, just the tip of the iceberg. But today, what I really want to do is dig into something that has just gotten under my skin. I think it has you as well, if you're into true crime, and that is Scamanda. Scamanda is a blockbuster podcast and ABC Hulu series right now that is topping the charts nonstop, no matter where it is. And it's about to go overseas as well. And if you have listened to any or all of Scamanda and all the bonus episodes, I've got a treat for you because Charlie Webster, the host, is my guest today, and she's going deep. her conversations, on her off-the-record conversations, on the interviews that never made her podcast or the ABC Hulu series, and also her background, because Charlie herself is a trauma and abuse victim. So she has a heck of a lot of empathy for the subject matter, the victims, and also for trying to understand Scamanda, the queen of all con artists.
Amanda Riley was a mother, wife,
speaker at her church.
Everybody loved her.
She got diagnosed with cancer.
I heard the words, "You have stage 3 blood cancer."
We thought she was God's gift.
When Amanda told me she had cancer, I was so devastated.
A beloved young Christian woman fighting a battle undeserved. We gave our hearts, our prayers.
Everybody put their hands over her and said, "Heal this woman. Oh God, heal her."
I'm thankful that I have cancer because I am now surrounded by the right people in my life.
There was just something inside of me just saying, this isn't right.
And then all of a sudden, it went dark.
She was a liar.
Why would somebody fake cancer?
If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you run, don't walk, and check it out, either on the podcast or in the Hulu ABC series, or both, like I did. I thoroughly consumed every aspect of it, was completely entertained and engrossed by all of it. But this was a woman who faked cancer. That might just sound like a headline, but she faked cancer so deeply and intimately with so many people, including the closest people to her, and conned them out of money and conned them out of love and attention and care and support, and conned them out of babysitting and airline points and hotels and help me achieve my bucket list, send me to New York for treatment, and maybe I could see a Broadway show while I'm there on your dime. This was just, again, scratching the surface of how deep her con went. She conned her megachurch, all of them, all of these caring, loving people, out of everything, again, out of their emotional attachment to her and whatever wallet they could open up for her. One of the congregants even gave platelets because she didn't have money. That's Scamanda in a nutshell. But I think it all comes down to how we truly trust ourselves. When you get attached to the story Scamanda, you just sort of wonder, what is it about me that I could believe this? I could believe someone like this. You might not think so, but if you've seen Scamanda or if you've heard Scamanda, you will understand that we're not that different than all of the people that she conned. There's something about us that we want to be good. We want to believe the best in people, right? We certainly want to help people when they're down, and we don't want to look askance at them. If they're suffering from cancer, we're not really adept at probing and answering questions to vet it, right? Like, that's not what we do as humans. As humans, I think we are generally inherently good people, and we do want to help people, and that's why when people take advantage of that, it's so aggravating, because we don't know who we can trust next. That's kind of the overarching theme of Scamanda, and it's really the overarching theme of how good she was at taking our gut feeling. You know, when you just have that little gut, and wiping it out, obliterating it, taking your gut feeling and destroying it to the point where you have no immunity. She is literally the inoculation killer. She was able to just steal people's gut instincts from them, as well as a child and a husband and money and friendship and support and love and attention and all the rest that comes along with cheating and scamming. That was the reason I wanted to start off this weekly podcast with the story of Scamanda, and why I really wanted to dig in deeper with the people who worked the story. Because like I said, I think I'm just like you. I can't wait for every minute of bonus episodes. And with that, my choice was Charlie Webster. I am joined now by the most amazing, beautiful, talented, kind, loving, and I will add all the superlatives, in my head, Charlie Webster, who is the creator, the producer, and the host of the wildly successful Scamanda podcast, and also the producer and host of the wildly successful ABC and Hulu series, Scamanda. Man, girl, this is your year.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
It's actually
I'm kind of blushing a little bit. Like,
multiple
thank you
years.
so much. Yeah, it's been several years because the podcast blew up in 2023. Like, as soon as I launched it just went viral. And it was just incredible to see people's reaction, like, everywhere. And people were like, so, like, Reddit threads, TikTok, and worldwide. It ended up being like #1 in 16 countries. And then to have the podcast, the docuseries received in that way. And I was nervous too I think more nervous when the docuseries came out on that first night because the podcast had done so well. And I really wanted to make sure that the docuseries came to new audiences, but also did the OGs like justice, like did it
That's
justice.
Me.
Yeah,
That's
you're
me.
an OG, which is amazing.
I'll give you the rating. I listened to the podcast all the way through and the bonus episodes and then watched the series. And I thought, how do you do it? How did you, get it to be as gripping and enthralling? Because I already knew the outcome and everything. But no, it was really a wonderfully told story, an incredibly well-produced story. I kind of was thinking it gave Tiger King vibes, in that way that everybody was talking about it and it had us all gripped. Is that good or a bad thing? It's a good thing. It's a good, from a producer's standpoint, it's a great thing. I wanted to ask you some questions that I didn't know by watching everything, and it's how you fell into it. Like, how did you land in Scamanda world?
Oh gosh, I know. How did I land in Scamanda world? I've been in Scamanda world a while.
It's hard to remember that far back.
I'm very much still in that world. Yeah, I know. So I was actually making a podcast with 50 Cent called Surviving El Chapo. And I was creating a division for Lionsgate because they wanted a podcast division. But also my background's in TV as well as podcast and radio. I started in television as a broadcast journalist, on camera, and also behind the scenes, like producing and writing. And so anyway, I was doing that. And I remember somebody introduced me who had worked with Nancy and was good friends with Nancy.
Nancy Moscatello. Let's call a spade. She's just a dynamo.
Yeah. So Nancy Moscatello, who ultimately went after Amanda and took her down. She's the one that gave the evidence to the police and got the detective to start working on it and for them to listen. So yes, she is. She's like, I wouldn't like to go on the wrong side of her. She's like a dog with a bone, and quite rightly, because she's got her own experience with cancer. She lost her sister to cancer, and I think she'd got the bone between her teeth and was like, I'm not gonna. She was so convinced that Amanda was lying, and she saw the pain it was causing. She just did. She went after her. She dedicated so much of her life and her time to that.
That's the thing about our business in television. Things move fast. Demands are heavy. Budgets are not. And I still can't believe that you guys spent this much time, doggedly, half a decade, really, to follow the story and bring it to fruition. And but you did, and Nancy did. And because of that work and dedication and patience, we have the story. Do you think it was mostly because of HIPAA violations and regulations and roadblocks that it was that hard to chase and it took that long?
Yes and no. So HIPAA was part of it. So when Detective Martinez started to look into everything, he was so, and I think, again, we have this perception of the justice system. But let me explain what it's really like. He was so overloaded, and he had a choice of whether to take this case or not.
He was one guy. One guy in his department.
Yeah, he didn't have a team. One guy in his department sat there with about 100 folders on his desk being like, oh my gosh. And how on earth do you prioritize wrongdoing? Like, it should all be tackled. But this is the I don't know whether fascinating is the right word, but fascinating thing or unique thing about this is something that all of us, I think, can relate to. all of us have been impacted by cancer in some way, directly or indirectly. And I know, I would go on a whim and be like, all of us have been betrayed and lied to. And it cuts deep. And so I think for him, it did take Nancy a few times, a few phone calls. And I think for him, he was like, hang on a second. Like, I am going to look into this and put my time into this. And then you mentioned HIPAA laws. He just hit roadblocks, because he couldn't access, believe it or not, even the police couldn't access her medical records. And then he couldn't go any further because lying isn't against the law. And again, when I was making the podcast, you talked about time. Like, so much detail went into this. I can't even begin to tell you how many hours, how many sleepless nights, how many weekends to make sure the detail was there, to make sure the nuance pulled across so you really understood the subtlety and the insidious depth of this and the nature of it, and actually how it represented this full examination in a way of narcissistic behavior and manipulation, which I think all of us have experienced. So Detective Martinez, it's like, great, I can't even access. I'm like, great. I'm sure he didn't say that, but my interpretation is, great, I couldn't even access the medical records. What am I even supposed to do? Because the only way, I remind everyone, and if people don't know the story, Amanda lied about cancer, but she didn't get convicted for lying about cancer. She got convicted for wire fraud. So then he ended up speaking to Special Agent Lee, who is the IRS, at some conference and was like, please, can you take a look at this? And the IRS then have a choice. Is it a big enough case for them? Because it was only $105,000 that they could track
and
via the wires.
They've got stacks and stacks of big fish as well to fry. It really
millions.
is kind of miraculous that
it is.
That Martinez was able to do it with his caseload, that the IRS was able to do it with their caseload, and the small fish, presentation that she seemed to present. And again, the wire fraud, just to be really clear, it's very simple. If you lie and you get money because of your lie, and you use transactional tools to do so, meaning a wire or a check or a bank or a Venmo or anything, or the internet, that is classic, wire fraud, which is what they got her on. But the crime, I feel, was like the crime of a stolen soul. I feel like she stole all of our souls, and I'm not even a victim of hers. I feel violated from what she did to just my fellow humans.
Yeah, and I think that's why she ended up getting prosecuted. Because
as big as she got, like the judge threw the book at her and went well beyond what the prosecutors asked for, because there was this additional crime of the heart.
Yeah, I think it is a crime of the heart anyway, because I've spoken to everybody involved in this that knew Amanda, and not one person is, bothered about the money. And I'm not saying it's because they're all rich and money doesn't matter. It's because that it's not that sticks with you long term. It's the pain and the betrayal and the time that people gave, and their prayers, their energy, their hope, their feelings of inspiration too, in terms of, you got this woman who she's doing life, she's fighting what life throws at her, which again, I can certainly relate to, and I think all of us can. We've all had some kind of trauma and things that life comes along, right? And it hits you with things, and you have to survive and fight, and you've got this woman presenting in front of you who is doing just that. That is people's hope that she took as well. And then to me, the most important thing that Amanda took from people is their own trust in themselves. Because when somebody betrays you like that, you then question who you are. And that's what's so damaging. And absolutely, I should say that anybody that can relate to this, that's ever been lied to, scammed, betrayed, manipulated, it's not your fault. So you shouldn't question yourself and your own judgment. But we often as a society put it as in like, and I've seen comments on social media, she wasn't thin enough, she had some weight on her, she had her eyebrows. How can people have... No. That's why when I was doing the podcast and making the podcast, and then we were making the docuseries, is to really demonstrate every day, this is your friend that you're seeing in hospital. You're seeing pictures of what's going on with her. It's demonstrated in front of you. She didn't lie from behind a keyboard. she did live through what was portrayed as cancer.
And she lied to your face. Like
Yes.
she looked at you and held your hands.
Exactly.
And cried with you and lied to you. I mean,
so why would you ever question that? So
Why
the
would you-
shame is,
Right.
the feeling of like mistrusting yourself shouldn't be on you. But that's really hard to reconcile with. So yeah, I mean, I remember being at the sentencing, and what stood out at the sentencing wasn't the money that Amanda took through wire fraud, which was through her fundraising page. That's where mainly the money and the crime came from. She had a fundraising page and people gave money through it. That's how she got caught, and through her blog posts, because she was so detailed in her blog posts. But then there was little tiny, not tiny lies because it's one big lie, but tiny details that weren't quite right. But you would never notice unless you were going through with a fine tooth comb. And then, that
I'm a total stickler for those, because now I've lived enough years where I'm like, I call bullshit.
Yeah, but you're not going to...
I'm always looking for those little
You're not going to
details to trip
question your
people up.
friend, though, that stood crying
No.
and holding
Well,
you and, like, stood in
Lots of-
church.
But you know what? Lots of spouses don't question their cheating spouse, even though they see all these little signs. And these little
Exactly.
signs are really something that shouldn't be ignored.
Yeah. But you know why we do that? I know we're like, there's so much psychology in this as well, because why we do that is because sometimes it's harder to face the reality that your spouse is cheating. Sometimes it's harder to face the reality that there's this woman that you've invested your time, money, hope, your emotions into, your family time, your faith into, to then admit that she's faking cancer. That's very hard. 'Cause
And
then
for
you
those
have
who are
to go and-
listening, it's really important to know right now, for those who are listening or watching, that, this isn't just you and me shooting the shit about this. Like, you literally do know what you're talking about. You've got a background in betrayal and in hurt and pain. You were molested by your running coach, who you trusted. You've suffered homelessness. Like, you really do have the goods to back up the hypotheses and the theories that you're able to sort of weave into your work. I just want people to know that we're not just two girls, yammering on about what we think about life.
about cheating spouses.
right, exactly. But I did want to
appreciate
ask
saying
you
that.
about that, because, for those who think they blame themselves for falling for her, she was really good. I don't know many other cases I've come across in the 37 years that I've been covering, crime, justice, and news, of someone who's this good at lying. And you spent 25 minutes on the phone with her from prison, and I wondered if you felt yourself getting sucked in, because she is this good.
I'm really glad you asked me that, because I feel like I need to talk about this and also address it a bit, because I have seen like mixed comments maybe, and some people comment and said, oh my gosh, I can't believe you've got suckered in by her, or you believe her. And I'm like, no. What I am here to do is to bring the story to you in such a detailed way. And part of that is me contacting Amanda. Part of my job as a journalist is to reach out to Amanda, because she's not just part of this story, she is this story. So it's not irrelevant what she's done, but I have to make sure that I'm vigilant in my storytelling, because what if there was more to it? What if there was something else? What if there was somebody else? And also, what if she's really not sorry? And what if she's calling everyone else, the liars? So it's really important to get the response from somebody and that you're talking about and you're involved in, and you're supposed to ethically as a journalist anyway. But also it's important to learn from, because this also could be a cautionary tale. Like, I have spoke to Amanda, and it's not for me to judge whether she's lying or not. It's for me to tell you what she said. And I believe that people want to know that, because the only person's voice we've never heard in this, well, apart from the husband, soon to be ex-husband, is Amanda. And so I did speak to her, and that phone call, by the way, wasn't an out of the blue phone call. That phone call was after God knows how many, like months and months and months, probably a year of emailing back and forth. emailing back and forth.
What was that like? Like, what kind of a repartee did you have with her in all those communiques?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it was me. It was her it was me initially asking if she'd be part of the podcast. That was actually before she got put in prison. So the first contact was us texting each other before she went in prison. And it was me saying, look, I'm doing this podcast. I'm making this story about what's happened. I'm, she was like, Nancy, I'm not Nancy. Nancy went after Amanda and it became very personal. Amanda tried to sue her, took her to court. That's what's fascinating.
Nancy suffered greatly because of Amanda's lies. I mean, $250,000 to defend herself against, libel. I mean, and slander. When the slanderer and the libeler was Amanda.
Yeah, because and maybe we haven't talked enough, or I haven't talked enough in terms of like in the public about Nancy, because Nancy's an interesting. I don't want to use character because this is her life, but she's an interesting woman because she did dedicate a lot of her time, which is fascinating in itself, to take this woman down. Like, not many people would do that. And she didn't give up. And she did stand there in court and present her case, because she had to present her case and show that she wasn't harassing Amanda. So that's interesting in itself. You've got these two women, very different, but both displaying behaviors of like digging in a way, because Amanda lent in more. The more Nancy put pressure on her, and then Nancy was not going to give up either. So
but one was the force of good. When I look at Nancy, I think, exactly. Oh man, half a decade in the force of good. There's so few of us that could afford that time, afford that mental energy, the mental energy
It's not
to
just,
stay with this story, right?
Yeah,
especially with all the roadblocks.
So much. Yeah, and again, we see like documentaries, whether it's podcasts and TV. And we don't see the years and years of trying to get something like, trying to get the truth told, let's say. And so in my initial conversation, it was all about, look, I'm making this. I am a journalist and I am telling this story. I'm not like coming after your life. I'm telling this story. It's an important story to tell. I wanted to make sure that the victims got a voice. And also what was really interesting is when I was speaking to the victims of it, and I'm using the word victims, I know people maybe feel funny about that connotation, but what I'm using it is in the context of the fact that they were victims of Amanda's crime, and they were by law. And the victims only had a piece of their story. They did not know what you all know now. They just knew their own experience. They had no idea what Amanda was doing to other people. They had no idea the other communities she was in. They just had their own personal story. So by me, I basically put all this jigsaw puzzle, we call it a jigsaw in the UK, pieces of a puzzle together so people could really see. And I know that it's helped so many of the victims because they feel validated in everybody else's story of how all this happened.
Wasn't just me who fell for it. She was a pro. I mean, Amanda was a pro.
Did they bond, by the way? 137 victims, should I add?
Did they bond over, like, I can imagine if you've all been a victim of one person who's done this to you and torn your soul out along with the cash or the in-kind, because the victims who helped her with babysitting and gave her airline points and gave her hotels and experiences and concerts and all the rest, they were victimized too. They just weren't part of the transactional legal case. Did they bond together at all, any or many of them, in the fact that they'd all been victimized by the same woman?
Some and no. Like some did. Like I think Lisa and Alita did. Lisa, Alita, and Nancy became very close. So Lisa is the anonymous source that tipped Nancy off. Nancy, as we've said, was the person who originally started to look into Amanda, and Alita is the ex-wife of Corey, who plays a huge part because this story is also a family story. It's a story of family betrayal too. And
is there a Scam Corey story that's going to come
Is there what?
There's a Scamanda, but is there a scam Corey coming out at any point? Because I swear, you know it when you know it, even if you can't prove it. And with Corey and even Peggy, Amanda's mother, I just feel like there's so much there that maybe you can't prove with the IRS, but I just feel like there's just such a correlation between the crimes.
So, a scam Corey. It's funny as well because not everybody's name works with the word scam, right?
Right.
So
And that one doesn't.
It's just
but we know what we're talking about.
And it sounds awful for me to say this, but it is kind of just beautiful that Amanda's name
I know.
works perfectly with the word scam. But anyway, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, Corey, so let's go over the details again. So, this was a case that was prosecuted by the IRS in the end because Amanda got done for wire fraud, money that was given through her fundraising page to Amanda's fundraising page, Amanda's account. It wasn't all the other stuff. So with Corey and Amanda got together. He is 12 years older than her, and they were in a relationship and a marriage through this whole period of time. So you can decide whether you think that somebody would know if their wife has cancer or not. Corey also did say under oath, and we have the audio is in, I spent 6 months trying to get it, is in the podcast. And he said that he goes to all Amanda's appointments. He also claimed bankruptcy because of medical bills. And when he was fighting for custody of his daughter, who is called Jessa, who Amanda referred to as her bonus daughter, and that's Alita's daughter, and Alita's the ex-wife of Corey. Amanda's cancer was used in the custody battle.
It was germane. I mean, it was germane to the custody issues and the child support issues, where we're buckling under the weight of the cost of treating Amanda's cancer, and then over there is my ex-wife, getting child support. The whole thing is so appalling and so inhumane, especially going after Jessa for, to take custody of Jessa away from Alita by claiming Alita was crazy. And again, this is the thievery of the heart, right? I always say that Amanda didn't just steal people's money and their in-kind donations. She stole a child and she stole a husband.
Yeah, and that's the importance of the story.
Yeah.
The importance of the story is the emotional trauma, and also how emotional trauma is long-term. And, let's just give a quick mention to Jessa, because that is really important. We look at all the victims in this case, and as there are many, and also people that weren't even involved in the case, but people that have lost people to cancer, people that are having to live with cancer and struggle with that every day. Mm-hmm. They're victims. Because this is somebody who, I've never had cancer, but I was critically ill 8 years ago, which is another story in itself, and was on life support and in a coma, and I never wish that on anyone, ever. I can't even tell you the distress it is, and I know that people listening to your show, Ashleigh, who ever have suffered illness will know how horrific it is. So to lie about that is just, I don't know.
Unconscionable.
But Jessa, she was a child that was raised in a lie. And you mentioned a little bit about my own background. I wrote a book called Why It's Okay to Talk About Trauma. And I know what that's like under very different circumstances. I know what that's like. And so then if you think about it, Jess was a child. So that's all she knew. That's when we learn how to view ourselves and to view the world outside. So she learned that. And then to then realize everything she'd learned, her environment was a lie, that's so damaging. And, and that's something that she's having to process and recover and relearn
her whole foundation,
world.
Right? So her whole foundation was, and now she questions her whole foundation, and how are you
her
supposed to
foundation
ever
was
trust?
That. Exactly.
Yeah.
So she couldn't go back to a foundation that was built on. Her foundation was built on a lie. And also Amanda has 2 boys, so
I wonder how their process. They were awfully young, but still, they're going to see coverage of this, no matter what age they end up being. They're going to see, what their mom's realities were.
And I was conscious of that. I was just going to say I was conscious
about
of that
the kids?
because like I'm putting this story out there, and because of like Nancy did the incredible work, but then it was me that then did the investigation, like as in a journalistic investigation. Nancy's not a journalist, and then made it into this story.
Well, let me
there.
just say, none of us gets inoculated from criticism if we have children. Like, we go to prison if we commit
But I
crimes,
just felt for the
regardless of whether
children.
we have kids. I know what you're saying, but
I felt for the children, because the children.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
But it's her fault, not any of us. Telling the story has nothing to do with it. But I see what you're saying. You feel for them no matter what. But as a journalist, like I said, the world is built on you get punished and you don't get to be inoculated from it if you have children. And it's very sad for them. But it's her fault, 100%. It's not ours and it's not yours. That's for sure. I sometimes wonder if I gravitated to your story, your podcast, and the Hulu and ABC series, because my brother was recently diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma, and he's undergoing treatment as we speak. And so it's just unbelievable that someone would steal from strangers' realities, right? Like, she's literally stealing from my brother's reality because he truly is going through it. Yeah. And it made me think more about Amanda's life. Like, how did she end up this horrible? And I want to touch on that with you because you've covered this, and it's, I think, really insightful. She was a liar as a kid. Like, her best friend talked about Amanda lying about nothing and everything, inconsequential stuff, just as a kid. Do you think it was because Amanda got the bug early that you can get attention if you just spin a few harmless lies?
Yeah, I do think, and again, I am very well versed in psychology. I'm not a psychologist, but I have studied trauma psychology. So I go there. Because it's a knowledge I have and an expertise I have. And I also go there because I have a lot of lived experience, like you wouldn't believe, with all this stuff. So I immediately went to childhood, and I think we all do. We look for reasons why. Sometimes there's not a reason why, but we look for reasons why. And I also am big on patterns of behavior. I also studied that. So I write about that so much in my book. I'm like, patterns of behavior. Because this is about a pattern of behavior.
It starts early, right? As a little kid. Do you think it was the attention she was looking for?
Yeah, I spoke to a lot of her childhood friends, even before I released even for the podcast. They weren't in the podcast, but a lot of them were very cautious, interestingly. So sometimes what I do, if somebody doesn't want to speak on record, and I would never, ever force anybody or make somebody feel pressured to, these are people's lives. I always keep that as the center to everything I do. These are people's lives, not just a story that we're going to watch and consume. And but I do speak and get information. Like, I spoke to a lot of people off the record for the podcast to make sure that my information was right. That's really important to me. It's not for me to say that Amanda was lying in her childhood, or that Amanda's this and Amanda's that. Like, I'm really careful on that. And again, that came up with mental health. It's a mental illness. I'm really careful to not diagnose Amanda. I'm not diagnosing her. I'm not a clinical psychologist. I'm not going to put something out that's not true in the world. So I spoke to a lot of people that you will never hear about. And in her childhood friends, they all said the same thing. And that's really important too. Because, I've got to keep in mind, like, what if their story is not true? So I'll always speak to multiple people. And they all said that she kind of came from a normal background. And I was like, what? And that, I know it sounds awful, but I almost wanted to find this, like, big thing, because it would then help me explain. Like what, why? But I didn't. She was from a more normal middle-class background. Nobody noticed anything apart from that she would seek out adult attention. That came up a lot. Instead of seeking out, like, peers, your friends, she'd seek out, if you go around to somebody's house, she'd want to talk to the mother or the father. and seek out their approval, their attention, their conversation, not the kid that you're meant to go round and be having a play date with, right? And that came up a lot, which is really interesting to me. That's somebody that's already learning those behaviors, or maybe feels that they're not getting that attention. And then
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. It does to me. Yeah, I'm glad it does to you too.
I wonder if as she grew and continued to seek that kind of attention from anybody and strangers, especially with the blog, she started to realize there was a byproduct of cash. Like you could make money off this too. And that was also irresistible.
Maybe, but I think it was more that it was validation. It was people saw her. And I think that's even deeper than cash and even stronger than cash. And we see that through social media. We see that through people wanting likes and needing to influence and for people to like your videos but for where's that validation come from? People you don't even know. And so I think it was more about being seen, about attention, about validation. And that to me is a much deeper driver than money any day, in my opinion. And the other thing,
fascinating because she was in thick, and you kind of think like the amount of work that it took on her behalf to continue the lie and to cover up everything behind her as little mistakes were made. I mean, if she'd only dedicated that work to a job, she'd be way ahead financially. But the amount of work she dedicated, most people, even good liars, would eventually try to wind themselves out of it because it's too hard, it's too stressful, and they just know the jig is going to be up any minute. But she was calm and cool and forged ahead, even with a house being raided by the IRS. Nothing fazed her.
I know, and that's really interesting behavior. I remember speaking to Detective Martinez, and he was like, she just sat there as if she wasn't bothered. And I never forget him telling me that, because I had obviously so many conversations with him, not just on record as well. But one thing I just wanted to pick up on what you just said, oh yeah, that was it, is that maybe, but at the same, maybe it's like, oh God, this is just so hard. Because I'm like, I don't know where I'd get that. I don't know how, like the energy to do that.
The energy.
The like, I'd be so paranoid. I'd be like an anxious mess because I'd be like, oh my God, did I forget to like say the wrong thing to that person? I wouldn't be able to do it. But also I'm like too straight up anyway. I'm very black and white person.
You've got a good heart. You know,
yeah.
I'm
English and I'm Northern English, and we're kind of known for that. But what I was going to say is I also think the other way round, that actually once you've lied so much, how on earth do you get out of that? Like how?
You get so wound in, there's no way to
get
out.
You lie again, you dig a further hole, then you have to lie again to lie about that lie. Then you have to, so I'm wondering if it's also that how did you, because in Amanda's, and I'll tell you why I've got this theory, because in Amanda's blog post, sometimes they did, in the podcast, I remember using the line, writing the line, and then her blog went dark. And I feel like I can recite all the lines that I wrote for the podcast.
She needed a break from herself.
Yeah, but I also think that there was moments that, was she trying to stop?
Maybe.
And I remember you asked me about the phone call I had with her. It was a video call. And she did say to me, and in the emails that we went back and forth, that, she should have just stopped. But she didn't stop because she thought that she would lose everyone. But if she had stopped, she wouldn't have lost everyone, which she has.
That's an amazing sort of dynamic that, you present. Like, she had so many choices. I mean, look, all the way along, she had so many choices. Can I ask you, I wanted to pivot a little bit to another part of this story that wasn't featured so much in the podcast or the series, but it was the school principal part. Like that piece has really gotten under my skin, and it's made me very sad. A lot of it made me sad. This one made me very sad. The fact that she wormed her way in to be a school principal by lying about her credentials. And then rather than just enjoying what she'd, won by cheating, she targeted the other employees. She made their lives hell. She stole money in a cancer fundraiser for herself and another teacher who truly had cancer and died. Yeah. She took a disproportionate amount of those funds that were raised. But she again stole a soul. She particularly bullied and harassed one of the good-hearted teachers who wanted to be a teacher all her life, to the point where that teacher quit and said she needed to leave teaching because Amanda was just so awful.
Yeah.
I want to get into your head a little bit about that piece, because truly I can't get over it.
Yeah, there's so much to that. It just reminded me that somebody, a journalist, for a press interview the other day, asked me what were the most powerful interviews that you did and sat down with, and one of them was Jessa, and the other one was the woman you just mentioned, who, she's actually in the bonus episode. She contacted me after the podcast. I didn't know about her, and I say that, and I caveat that with, like, I honestly did so much work. Nancy did so much work, and then I did so much work, and then I had like an amazing two people called Jackson and Casey that also helped me do so much work to try and find. We did a really thorough, like, tooth comb investigation to find things, and we didn't know about her. And she contacted me after, and she thanked me about the podcast, and she said that for the first time ever. So let me explain who she is. She was a teacher at the school that Amanda was principal of, and then she'd had some kind of suspicion about Amanda, and things weren't right, and she said that Amanda was bullying her. And then, so when this woman challenged Amanda, she was the one that got vilified and that got basically fired. And she had to leave. Then she had to leave the school, and it was so damaging to her that she actually left the entire career. And this was a woman that told me that her dream was to be a teacher, and I think that's incredible. Like, teachers are incredible. And then she was just numb and lost and felt so
Injured.
You know, Amanda was the one getting on, and she was like, well, it must be me then. It must be me that's wrong. So when she heard the podcast, she said for the first time in I think it was like, I can't remember how many years, like quite a few years, like 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, that she'd felt like she finally was seen. And that just shows the power of, and I don't want it to sound like,
no, you're right. It's the power of telling someone's story, Charlie. It is. I think I think that's an overarching theme that we need to touch on, and that is that by telling this story, you have given validation to a lot of people who've been lied to and cheated and had their souls and their hearts sucked out of their chest. It's a shared experience. A lot of us go through it. It's not just you, you know. It's not just you, the person who's listening right now or watching. You're not alone.
Yeah, and that's why I do what I do. Always. And I think you can see that in the pattern of the stories that I tell.
And the passion.
I hope so, yeah. I give everything. Like, probably sometimes too much of myself, and don't look at my own self-care when I make these things. But because it's so important to me, and I wouldn't change it any other way, because I feel like you could have told this story many ways. You know, it could have just been like, oh, this woman faked cancer, she lied about some things, and she took this money.
The headline doesn't sell it, though.
No,
the headline doesn't sell it.
Because it's so
the
much
depth,
more than that.
Yeah, it was the depth of how you told the story of just how far she dug into our chest cavities to steal everything we had, all of the fabric of our trust, the fabric of our human relations. She stole things that you don't know are stealable. And I think that's how you kind of, this story got to us that way. And
because
I actually wanted to,
she stole were the most, sorry to interrupt, but were the most valuable thing to us. That's the most valuable thing to us in our lives. Yeah. Always. Like
our spidey senses, our sense of trust, our ability to know who it is we're talking to, or to know who it is we love, or to know who it is we befriend, or all of the above. And those are very valuable emotions that just got obliterated like it's just a grenade, like Amanda threw a grenade.
Can I just say one more thing about the school? I know you want to ask me another question, because I know that's important to you, and I know you're passionate about that. And there's so much in this podcast, so it's like that was a part of it, and then there's so much in the docuseries, and you can only fit so much in, right? But when I spoke to so many parents in that school and teachers, and it was really conflicting sometimes for me, because everybody said how much the kids loved her, and she would walk into school and everybody could choose whether they gave her a high five or a hug, and kids did love her. But then again, I caveat. So again, that's not me feeling sorry. That's me giving you the fact. And that was a fact. Like, I've got to deliver those facts. And that's what everybody told me. But then at the same time, there was a woman who also had cancer who they fundraised for. You touched upon it a second when you asked the question. And Amanda took half of that money that they fundraised for. And this woman did have cancer, and she's not here anymore. She's sadly passed away because of cancer. And then there was a boy who had a rare illness, and he was part of that school, and Amanda was close to him. And Amanda did say to him, I understand, I know what it feels like, and prayed with him. And it's so, again, contradictory because, well, the boy loved her and it helped the boy, but at the same time, it was all based upon a lie. And that betrayal is so much deeper than an outright lie, I think.
It's important to tell that, by the way, you know, telling the story of the children loving her is a big part of how Amanda was able to prosecute her life in this way. She was lovable, endearing, delightful. She had dimples, you described. You know, like, I see the pictures of her and you almost like her just looking at her. It's a big part of how she got away with, I think, so much, was just this lovable personality, which was maybe a split personality. You know, if she was clearly capable of being so, you know, just diametrically evil, there's a lot going on that neither you or I have the degrees to diagnose, but there's a lot going on there. There was just another aspect of everybody's so starving for bonus content from you, right? Like, I don't think you could ever keep up with the appetite that's out there. But one of the things that you were able to tell was that in prison, in the first, I think it was like 18 months, she went to the emergency via ambulance 24 times, and that doctors bore witness to her interfering with her IVs and fudging her breath in tests that would have been helpful to know what was wrong with her. I mean, how? Do you have any more insight into that reporting?
Yes, you're right. That was reported and documented. I've seen the documents, the prison documents. I should say it's not for cancer.
Figured as much.
She's not doing that because she says she's got cancer. According to her, she does have things wrong with her. But that was behaviour in prison. But again, according to her, that was valid. So that's all I really know and all I can say on it. And I think
the doctors also used the word in the diagnosis Munchausen, that they suspected that she might be suffering from Munchausen. And for those who've heard the term and don't really know, or they've heard it called Munchausen by proxy, Munchausen is seeking attention for yourself by feigning illness. Munchausen by proxy is hurting someone and then coming in as the savior to seek attention. So Munchausen would make sense if she is still looking for the attention and found that the best mechanism was through health problems.
Yeah, it's complicated, and I know people don't like things to be complicated because they like to just have like a monster,
a clean answer,
and things black and white. And also fictitious disorder was the other thing that's mentioned. But I'll also say that she hasn't been diagnosed with it. And I'll also say that she's now out of prison. So December 2024, she left prison, and she's now in like a rehabilitation re-entry home, and she'll get out of prison this year in 2025. That's because she's also got good time served. So how do you reconcile with that? I know.
And
I'm, again, just delivering facts. Right.
No, it makes sense.
Again,
and if you're the prison and you see that she's feigning illness and taking 24 ambulance rides, you would not think that that's good behavior. You'd think that is behavior you'd be punished for, maybe even be in the shoe. But
yeah.
And by the way, I should mention, I did some research on the facility where she's doing, what we would normally colloquially refer to as a halfway house. It's still full on bars and guards.
I was trying to be like, And also, I was like, is it only English people that call it halfway house? Sometimes
no,
I like
it's American too. It's American, it's
there we go.
Canadian. We've got a nice international nation.
She's in a halfway house. Thank you for saying that.
But she is under bars and guard, as we were we were instructed when we called to say, okay, is she free to walk about the cabin? Or they said no, it's full bars and guard. There's just these programs for reentry, and maybe they decided that someone who's not been incarcerated long, but someone like Amanda needs it more than, say, the average guy who'd be jailed for 4 or 5 years and then be let out. Maybe they see something psychologically in her that they think she needs this kind of additional programmatic treatment rather than just being let out from full incarceration to ply her trade again.
I don't know though, but normally people do like go to a halfway house before they. Not everybody.
Sometimes,
but,
yeah. Sometimes
I've got the worst example ever. Like I remember El Chapo's wife, just because I did that whole show Surviving El Chapo, and I remember his wife. Was basically in the same prison and as Amanda, and she was then put in a halfway house in California too. So I don't know, but maybe I do know that she has done schooling and she has done counselling, and counselling was part of her, was mandated as part of her sentencing.
Hey, look, she's smart and she's strategic, and so I do not doubt for a moment that Amanda C. Riley went into prison with a plan. What do I do to get out of this quickest? Like, do I take these courses? Do I sign up for this program? What do I do to get out sooner? Because she is that clever. She's conniving, but she is also, very, very strategic. Can I ask you this? When she's finally fully released, I think it's December of this year, 2025, are you done with her? Are you exhausted by it? Do you plan to follow
Give me a call
and find out if she plans to continue her expertise?
Call me then. That's so good. You've made. It's not very often I'm lost for words. I'm like. I actually, as I sit here speaking to you today, don't know. However, if she decides she wants to speak, then I am here. And we can see what happens with that. And she knows that I'm here if she wants that option. I did ask her if she would like to speak on the podcast, if she would like to be interviewed by me for the podcast. She declined. Then in the docuseries, I asked her again. She did agree to speak to me, as you've all seen. That's in episode 4. And she did give me the message that she wanted it to be put out there, that her mum wasn't involved and her brothers weren't involved. That was really important to her, that I put that out there. And
I'm glad that she wanted that. I'm just personally, as a consumer, a listener and a viewer, I don't believe that Peggy wasn't involved. It's impossible. Didn't Peggy, her mother, have some communication with someone after Amanda pled guilty and kept the ruse going about the cancer?
Yeah, she had communication with Rebecca Cafiro, because Rebecca, who's in the podcast on the docuseries, actually knew Peggy and was friends with Peggy, and they worked together before she met Amanda.
Right?
She met Amanda.
It's how she met Amanda, was
Peggy.
through
Yeah. So if you speak to her, she definitely gives you an outright answer of what she believes, because she doesn't think it adds up, and she believes that Rebecca believes that Peggy, Amanda's mum, knew about what Amanda was doing, and so that's what Amanda told me, so that's what I'm telling you. She told me, so, and that's what I told people in the docuseries in episode 4, was that's what she told me. So it's not me going, this is what I think, it's me telling you what she told me, because I'm the only person that has had access to Amanda, and I'm telling you what she's told me. So I think some people, to be clear, that's what I'm doing. And so she decided not to speak on the docuseries, but instead speak to me and me give that message. And also she said that she did toil between, she did go back and forth. Like, this wasn't just no, she went back and forth. We went back and forth a lot on whether that's what she should do. And because she was serving a sentence, she wanted to carry on serving a sentence and finish it out before she decides whether she should speak. But, you know, people don't like me saying this, but she told me that she was sorry.
Well, listen, if she
not to
actually
me,
is,
just to,
it'll be
to
very,
people, you know.
Yeah. It'll be very hard to believe if she's sorry, because
and that's the problem
she's laid
she's
too
got.
much foundation for automatic acceptance.
She's hurt
That's
a lot
for
of
sure.
people. Yeah,
she's hurt a lot of people, and I think a lot of the listeners are angry for the victims. And I know as a listener, I am angry for the victims. I'm angry for my brother, who's really suffering and being treated for cancer right now. And
I'm so sorry for that, because you've made thank you for sharing that about your brother, because this is the thing, like this is something that people are
these are real
with.
things for people. These are real traumas. These are real stories for people. And misappropriating them, stolen valor style, it's not just a lie. It's I mentioned at the top, it's stealing people's hearts and souls as well, including the listeners who were so angry and frustrated and felt for these victims. I hope you speak to her. I hope you continue to follow her. I hope that there's 1,000 more bonus episodes to come. Charlie Webster, I cannot thank you enough for spending all this time with me. And literally, I feel like we just scratched the surface.
I know. I feel like that's the thing with this. I feel like there's just so much. You could just talk for so long about it.
It's true. But thank you for doing the work that you've done.
Well, thank you for having me on, and thanks for being one of the original podcast listeners. It's thanks to you all that it is where it is now, and I know that all Amanda's victims really also are glad that this is out there, because they feel that there is justice in the fact that this is out there as a story and not just through law.
They've been heard, which is important, and also equally important, people know who she is and what she looks like, and so they can at least have their own backs.
Yep. Yep, it's going to be everybody knows, and it's going to be hard for her to.
It'll be hard to reprise that kind of behavior upon full release. Thank you again for this, Charlie.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much for staying with me through this podcast. I just want to encourage you, please like and subscribe and leave comments for me. I also want to hear what cases you want me to look into. I got a stack this big, but I really do want this community to work with me on this podcast, and I want to bring your passion into this. So please let me know in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, definitely leave a comment and let me know your thoughts about the podcast, and then also what cases you would like me to cover, and like and subscribe, and get all the rest as well. And then I encourage you to follow me on social media as well. I'm on all the platforms, Instagram, X, which I still call Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And I've got a lot of content going out as well from my News Nation program onto those platforms, and then also from this podcast onto those platforms. So I encourage you to follow me there as well. And then I've got a lot in the works also. I'm kind of connected to the Menendez case in a very deep and intimate way, and I am hoping for some pretty serious content coming your way from the Menendez brothers themselves. Also, I feel I've got a very strong connection going with Gypsy Rose, and so we're looking forward to hopefully having some pretty good content coming forward with Gypsy Rose Blanchard also. But in the meantime, I just want to leave you with this. The truth isn't just serious. The truth is drop dead serious.